Good morning and welcome to Art Basel Miami Beach Conversations. We have a very special conversation we're very excited about today. Our moderator is Abaseh Mirvali, who's an independent curator, and she works in Mexico, Berlin, and Istanbul. And I'm going to leave it to her to make all the rest of the introductions. Have fun.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay. Buenos dias. I am Abaseh, and I'm really thrilled, and I would like to thank Mary, our Basel, and Jessica for allowing us to bring this group of people together and be able to share some of our experiences with you, and hope that we hear from you about any thoughts or any suggestions or donations to any of the institutions that we work with. Those are also welcome. But I'm really thrilled to be able to have a group of people on this panel that I truly admire, and I won't. Throughout the conversation, you're going to get to know about their institutions, and you will hear the passion in their voices. So I don't need to gush. But this morning we're going to start with Victoria Noorthoorn, who is the director of the Museum of Modern Art in Buenos Aires. And I embarrass her always, but I think it will be this way till I cease to exist on this earth. I fell in love with her in 2005 when we were on a panel in Buenos Aires, and she just had such a strong vision about what she wanted to accomplish, not only for herself as a curator, but for her community, the artists that she had worked with and was working with, and what she envisioned. And I can't believe that it's been nearly 10 years, and that last about more than a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago, when we heard that she was finally going to run this institution, and it brought all those dreams for all of us, for her to be able to do a program in an institution in Buenos Aires. She was so committed to that. So it really is kind of thrilling. And I think the way we're going to approach this panel, starting with Victoria and then Pablo León de la Barra, who is the Guggenheim map curator currently, but UBS, I forgot. The Guggenheim UBS map curator. And will be continuing that position throughout the next year, because his exhibition will be traveling from New York at the Guggenheim to the MAM in São Paulo, and also to Mexico City at the Jumex collection and foundation. So it's going to make a trip throughout, but he also has been in as an institutional person recently, but before independent, Victoria as well. And then we're gonna kind of bring the other leg of our community and the work we do with Bicalho from São Paulo, Brazil, who everybody knows that Brazil has had this amazing economy and the amazing cultural history, and the artists have been doing very well. But the institutions, it's only recently that the institutions are starting to form a base for support. And this was something that Chris was very, very instrumental in with the Pinacoteca, and now with Pivot, which is an independent curatorial kind of artist space or project space. And to hear how they're going about that, because in the other, these are just components that are developed more or less in each of our countries. And then we're going to bring it to someone that we know and admire tremendously because of everything she spearheaded, not only in Miami, but throughout the Americas and abroad by her work, Cisneros, who has the wonderful Fundación CIFO and exhibition stays, residencies, and allow her to share not only where the institution stands today and what it stands for and what it's planning to accomplish, but looking back kind of over a little more than a decade to see how it's evolved, because many of us do remember what Miami was the first time we came to Miami and what the scene looked here, and here we are so many years later, so it'll be really interesting. And then really leave it to have a conversation, because though we all work in the same cone, we are very far from each other often, and due to the economic constraints, we do not get to travel or be able to present our programs. And so this is a platform to be able to share those ideas with you. So it's kind of like a little workshop. So you're kind of part of a lab today, and I hope that you participate in that conversation. So the first kind of 10 minutes of each person's presentation will be very hands-on to give you a context of the institution, the community, where they are in the kind of the development of the cultural players in their city, in their context. And then we'll move to connect it to the United States, Europe, or wherever else our projects have taken us, so that it's not just something that we're talking about Argentina or Mexico or Brazil. So with that, I leave it to my wonderful colleague, Victoria.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I want to thank very deeply Abaseh for her invitation, this fabulous opportunity to share with you a bit of what we do in Buenos Aires at this time. And also I would like to thank Art Basel for this also fantastic platform of visibility, and Andras Shanto, who also invited me as well to Miami to be part of the BMW Art Journey jury for next year. I am thrilled and feel very privileged and honored to be the director of the Museo de Arte Moderno de Buenos Aires, MAMBA, a museum that was founded in 1956 by a very visionary man called Rafael Esquirru, whose first exhibition for the museum was on board of a ship that traveled 56 countries around the world, 56 cities around the world. He established for us a metaphor, the metaphor of a museum that should be in movement, that should be always looking for new horizons, that should overcome storms and difficulties, and look again for new cultures and new peoples and new ways of looking at the world. This has been very inspiring for us. We arrived at the museum 15 months ago, and we've been striving to create a platform along these lines. The museum later found a space in the 1960s, and very quickly Esquirru was able to position the museum as a very avant-garde museum, as the museum that was leading sort of, the artistic community at the time, and that was giving a home to this artistic community. Alfred Barr was there in the first openings of the museum, and later the museum found its permanent home in a tobacco factory in downtown San Telmo in 1989. Since then, it has undergone different architectonic renovations, and we've expanded. We have new galleries that have opened in 2010, and we are looking forward to a process of continued expansion. Hopefully, in 2 years' time, we will open 1,200 square meters of gallery space. So this is a museum in constant movement, in constant growth. As I was saying, we arrived at the museum with some energy. We were 6 people that joined a previous team of 15 people at the museum, and we came with many ideals. A museum, we want to create a museum that is a living organism. This is a museum that is not static, a museum that is flexible, that is able to respond to the boosting creativity in our art scene. We are part of a scene that is extremely sophisticated and very broad. We are a bit at the end of the world, and we have had many economic depressions and difficulties and challenges. Notwithstanding, we've been able to generate an art history and a history of art that is remarkable. And it's extremely sophisticated. So this museum is here to respond to this context. We are very ambitious, and we wish to create a new museum model for the world in terms of this flexibility and adaptability to circumstances in the artist studios. We wish to become the museum everybody wants to go to. So we want to be a magnetic museum. And we are starting to be very gradually a school museum as well, with education programs that are far from conventional and that are deeply rooted in artistic visions from visual artists, musicians, writers, theater directors, film directors, and so on. We are a museum that trusts the power of images. We like to believe that images have their own force, their own desires, and that they have to tell us what we have to do. We are also a museum that has the most important collection of modern and contemporary Argentine art in the country, with 11,000 works of art, the majority of which are Argentine. And we seek to question art history, to not accept art historical categories as given, but to question them at every time. We are interested in crossing boundaries and in creating and providing a liberating experience. How is it that we do this? When we arrived at the museum, the museum had a budget of $50,000 a year. And the city, this is a city museum, and the city decided to give this museum another, let's say, the opportunity it deserves historically, given the enormous history that it has locally. So we managed to have the support from the city of $1 million a year, and we have fundraised in the past year $2 million in terms of assets and bringing value to the museum. In order to do this, we've enlarged our team and we have created a professional team. We started, as I said, with 21 people 15 months ago. We are around 60 or 65, and we have created in the past year 6 professional departments. A curatorial department, which is the first curatorial department in a museum in Argentina that has more than 1 or 2 curators. We are actually 6 and growing and expanding. I hope to be 30 next year. A wonderful education department, an exhibition design, exhibition coordination, communications, and of course fundraising department. These are some of our young staff members. We have created a new identity that tries to transmit and to communicate to the world what we wish to be, which is to be the center, the undisputed reference for modern and contemporary Argentine art, and also a window into the world, affirming our roots in modernism, in the avant-garde, in the utopia of art. So this, of course, this identity has translated into our various spaces and our graphics and publications, which are, we have published 1 book so far. We don't go as fast with publications, but we will have 6 more before the end of the year. We've created an important exhibition program. With this annual budget of $1 million, we have created 24 exhibitions in the past year. What we are seeing here is an exhibition of our permanent collection, a very small exhibition focused on psychedelic art from Argentina from the 60s and 70s, which will change in April to another important exhibition named Matter. Because this museum needs to reply, to respond to the artistic community, we have decided to offer our permanent collection, which is a very important collection, a modest space, and to have on view at any moment 6 exhibitions at one time that would allow the artists in our community to feel represented and to give them visibility. So we've created mid-career retrospectives of artists that deserve an important visibility and have had not yet a museum exhibition or a publication after 20 or 25 years of sustained work, such as Graciela Jasper, Fabio Casero, or Sebastián Gordín. We have commissioned work from diverse artists, mid-generation and younger, such as Karina Peisajovic or Luciana Lamotte, to name a few. We are interested in working with artists who also work on the borderlines of the visual arts, such as this collective, Arte, who strongly believes in the importance of creating a healthy culture around the railway system. So they were restoring signs and creating fanzines and newsletters for the railway system inside the museum. We are interested in challenges such as creating Jorge Maki's container that was presented before in Switzerland and that the Argentines had not had the opportunity to see. And Jorge, at the end of, when we opened the show, said, Victoria, it was better than in Switzerland, which is a lot to say in this context. We are creating exhibitions of talented young artists, such as Luis Terán, and others who have used the museum as a studio, and Chilean artist Pablo León, who used the museum as a film set, as a, no? Abaseh asked us many interesting questions to prepare for this panel, and I'm closing. I do have more visuals though, so I continue. These are images of Sebastián Gordín's exhibition. Abaseh asked us if the person in the back could run the slides. I don't need to follow them strictly now. Abaseh asked us how how do we establish our program? And the answer to that is quite simple. We have a beginning of the year, a moment at the mid part of the year, and the end of the year. And for each one of these temporal moments, we are seeking to create what we call a universe of sense. This means there is an exhibition or a thought or one single work of art or an idea or a technical issue that is inspiring the curatorial team to bring together 6 exhibitions that could resonate together, that could amplify the questions when they come one in dialogue with the other. So this is how we work. We work collectively with the curatorial team, and we decide far in advance which will be these universes of sense, and we start to work deeply around them. Just to mention this slide here and the following images that we're going to see, they belong to an exhibition that has been important to us, an international exhibition of drawings from the Deutsche Bank collection, that when it arrived in Argentina, it entered in a dialogue with the museum's collection. We were very happy to see that the drawings in our flat files were desiring to get out of the flat files and to enter in a dialogue with international artists from whom they had nothing to envy. So one next to the other, and demonstrating the importance of Latin American and Argentine art, we are very excited to show this exhibition. We have also in view right now the donation of Leon Ferrari of 72 drawings. And I wish to show you a few slides, mostly of the family that comes in the next 2. The granddaughter of Leon holding her flowers the day of a very small pre-opening that we did just for the family, and Leon's widow. And this is an image I particularly love because it shows that we want to provide a home to the artists and to the artists' families. So we are creating the first catalogue raisonné of Leon Ferrari in order to respond to this very generous donation. Just to finish, we have an important education program in which we invite 2 school groups at one time of different provenance, different social and economic backgrounds, children with disabilities and children without disabilities, to come into a dialogue through art. This is very beautiful because the relationships continue beyond. And just to finish, we have a film program. We are starting a theater program next year, so we are expanding. All of this process is possible because of this support that we get from the city, but we are also developing circles of support in order to strengthen our fundraising strategies. So I thank you very much, and I thank you for your patience.
Pablo, we're going to continue. I think it would be nice maybe if you shared a little bit about kind of your trajectory and then how it led to MAP and the Guggenheim UBS MAP program that was created. Tell us a little bit about it. Not everybody might be familiar with how this program was started and what it's going to do. And then maybe share what you think is going to be happening, how it comes together.
So first of all, thank Abaseh. She's been a great colleague for the last 10 years. I call her my coleguita, and it's always a pleasure to be in a forum with her. Victoria, who has been also a source of inspiration, especially her 2009 Mercosur Biennale, like beautiful, inspiring. I still keep going back to it in my mind. Ella, who really has been a primary focus in bringing Latin America together through CIFO and supporting for more than 10 years through a grants program like the artists in the region. And Christina, who I'm just meeting, and I'm very excited to know more about. I didn't bring images, I'm so sorry, because I had understood no PowerPoints were allowed.
I did give an instruction for PowerPoint.
But so I'll invite you to visualize mentally beautiful images of artworks and a museum exhibition. I was invited a year and a half last July. I was appointed by the Guggenheim Museum in New York as the UBS MAP Latin American Curator. It's part of a bigger project, a 5-year initiative supported by UBS, the Swiss bank, in order to help the Guggenheim fulfill its global mission. If the Guggenheim wants to be really global, it's not just about building museums in other places, but really relating with those regions in unequal terms. And in a way, 3 regions were identified with which the museum wanted to strengthen its relationships. One was South and Southeast Asia, the second one Latin America, and the third one Middle East and North Africa. I was invited to do Latin America. Jun Yap, my colleague, she did South and Southeast Asia, which is a phase that's just finished. We're in the middle of the Latin American phase, and the curator from the Middle East will soon be appointed. The project's timings were really, let's say, crazy, to find a better word. I had a year to identify works to bring into that collection, to do an exhibition with those works, and then in the second year, to have that exhibition travel to 2 venues in the region. So it's going to MAM in Sao Paulo in April, and to Mexico City, to Jumex in November. The amazing thing, and I think that's why they chose me, and that's maybe why you wanted me to talk a little bit about my past career. For the past 10 years, I had been working as an independent curator, researcher, working from London. I lived in London, but exploring and creating relationships and doing exhibitions in different parts of Latin America. So in a way, I had done a lot of the groundwork as an independent curator that allowed me to have this kind of knowledge. Still, I mean, the great thing was that I could kind of reinforce and find a way into which make this research happen physically through the institution. The first 6 months, I spent mapping the region. The name of the project was mapping. So I did two kinds of mappings. The first one, it was research travel. And what I really tried to do was not only to go to those places that I already knew well, to confirm the artworks that I wanted to bring into the collection, but push myself and push our limits to go further to those places where the art world normally doesn't go. Countries which have a less art economy. We're very fortunate always to be invited by art fairs to go and see what's happening in places, or by exhibitions, museums, associations. But there's places where the art structures are weaker, and we don't go, and then we don't know what's happening there, you know? So I tried to go to Dominican Republic. I was 2 weeks ago in Bolivia. I'm going to go to Paraguay in a month. I went 2 times to Ecuador. So really try to go to these other regions and try to find out there what's happening there. So to push also the limits of our understanding of Latin America, and also towards the United States. The other thing I really really wanted to make people understand is that we cannot continue with this dichotomy of America, Latin America. The United States is becoming Latin America. People from Latin origin or Hispanic origin are 1/4 of the population of the United States. So all these boundaries are blurring, and our understanding of it is changing totally. The other thing I did was map the Guggenheim's relationship to Latin America. What was in the collection, what exhibitions have been done. And I found out that the Guggenheim had 160 works of Latin American origin, some really good, like early masters, Wilfredo Lam, Mata, Cruzies, Tamayo. But then there was a big void in the 70s, 80s, and then again it had started collecting artists, let's say from the 90s, 2000s, what I call the international global Latin American artists. Gabriel Orozco, Felix González Torres, Beatriz Milases, but there was this big void from the 70s and 80s. So I insisted that we should not only focus on the contemporary, which was the original aim of the project, but that we should also try to address this void, not only because of a nostalgia for the past, but also because I hate carrying microphones. I prefer Madonna style. No? Then I can move my hands and stuff. Not only because of a nostalgia of the past, but really because many of these artists, one, had been overlooked. Two, had made important contributions and had influenced the generation of artists working today. And three, many of them had worked in the United States because they had been exiled from their countries at the time that this was happening. So it was not about doing a checklist, and this is a very important thing for people doing collections. It was not about doing a checklist of artists that the collection should have, a list of names, but really artists that were relevant to the museum being in New York and in relating to Latin America. So in that way, and through the support of UBS, we could really have the work of David Lamelas, Luis Kamitzer, Marta Minujín, Juan Downey, Paolo Bruschi, Rafael Ferrer, and Alfredo Yar. So 7 artists that I considered seminal from that period and who were really kind of influencing the artists today. And then get the work or buy the work for the collection of 33 other artists. So in total, we bought the work of about 50 works from 40 artists, which entered in one go to the collection. So this is really important also because it's not something that happens every day. I think it's really kind of historical that a museum in Europe or the United States gets into the collection the work of 40 artists in one moment and brings them into the collection. The third thing I want to mention is that yes, it was about building a collection. Yes, bringing these artists from Latin America that hadn't had the opportunity to be in the collection. Yes, make the museum collect Latin American art and fulfill its global mission in this way. But that it was not only about collecting. It was also about creating a platform to understand why we're doing this, to understand the region, to understand the art from Latin America. And in these two things were very important. One, the website. So we really use the website as a platform to make things happen. I have a blog section where I report about the different regions that I go, what's happening there, what artists are doing. So really making the people in the US, but also the people in the region aware about what's happening in every place. And now even this time we're doing what I call Pablo TV, or Map TV. So I've been going around Miami with a camera and having people see what's happening in Miami in terms of Latin America. So also going beyond the kind of idea of glamorized Miami and what people think that it's only about parties and so really trying to find out what's really happening in Miami, amazing residency, artist projects. So doing the same with the website. And the other, inviting people from the region to write about what's happening and what I call the micro-revolutions happening in the region. And basically this is artist projects, curator projects that are doing that which many institutions were not doing or were not able to do before, no? I mean, I think now this is also changing in the region. Victoria and Chris in Pinacoteca are two examples of institutions in the region becoming stronger. But this was not the norm before. And really, these micro-revolutions were happening because artists or curators were taking the problems in their hands and doing that which was not happening in their community. So I invited people from the region to write about these micro-revolutions, amazing projects like Beta Local in Puerto Rico, an artist-run school, CIA in Buenos Aires, where also Roberto Jacobi has been doing this amazing project. Or overlooked artists, for example, Miguel Lopez talked about Giuseppe Campuzano in Peru and the Transvestite Museum he had done there. Giuseppe died last year, so really homenaging Giuseppe. And last, education, really doing the third point, really using the website, but also the support of UBS to focus on education, and again, not only education about children or public coming to the museum, but the website as an education tool. And here we were very lucky, and also to do something to experiment, thanks to the support of UBS. The museum could do things that it doesn't do normally, and in this case, we invited Luis Kamitzer, who's a really important conceptual artist from Uruguay, working in New York, to develop the education guide with the people from the museum. So they could do something different than what they normally do. And for Luis, it was also great to really come and confront the realities of pedagogy within the museum. So basically, just to give you an overlook of what we did and what's happening on the next year.
Thank you. So we'll then go back, because I certainly have a lot of questions. I want to thank Chris Bicalho, especially because I met her, and I was, I'm very much of an instinctual person. I either take to people immediately or I don't, and her energy was immediate. And it was, Pablo was the colleague that had always spoken about Brazil, everything that was happening in Brazil, his blog he would travel there. But although I was in Mexico and I had focused a lot on Argentina, but I'd never been to Brazil till 2 years ago, just knew what was going on, would hear about it, meet the artists. And then when you arrive in Brazil, there is definitely something very special. I always call that there's also gentleness there. But the way the institutions are kind of coming together, the projects are happening, as Pablo says, there is a new energy that probably came from a more grassroots kind of movement. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of have someone that was on the other side, not a curator or a museum director, but one of the people that wanted to see the institutions in our community have the ability to do more shows, have the ability to do more educational projects, be supportive if a project is coming, and how they got together. It's very different than the way things are certainly done in Mexico, and I think that was also kind of inspirational to me, because each country does have its politics and its way of going about things. So thank you, Chris, for coming and share with us a little bit what's going on.
Can you hear me? Yes. Strange without that. So thank you, Abaseh, for inviting me. Thank you, Art Basel, for putting this together. I was not directly involved with the museum, so it was something very new for me. I'm on the education field. And in 2012, I was invited by Pedro Barbosa. Some of you know him. He was a board member at that time at Pinacoteca, and he's one of Brazil's most innovative collectors. And the idea was to put together a group of acquisitions, to develop an acquisitions group based only on contemporary art for Pinacoteca do Estado de São Paulo. At that time, I mean, ever since 7 years ago, Brazil's economy was booming, and artists were becoming more internationally recognized. More international galleries were starting to represent Brazilian artists. There were more exposures in biennials, museums, art institutions. But there were many challenges for this project. First, Pinacoteca is a public institution. It's not only a contemporary art museum, it's a historical one, and it features art, mostly Brazilian art from the 18th century. It opened its doors in 1905 after a big donation of, not big, but big for us, 26 paintings from the Museo Paulista. And there were some, the idea of the acquisitions, this new acquisitions group that we were trying to build, was that first, it was not to be based on any tax incentive law. In Brazil, most museums and institutions, they benefit from Rouanet law, and this incentive law is based on a percentage of the total income tax due per year. And this allows companies to donate 4% of the total income tax due, and they get a rebate of 100% on the following year. This law also applies to individuals, but it allows individuals to donate 6%. But it's not a common practice. It's more common between companies instead of individuals. So we decided we were not going to apply for Rouanet group with this group because of the bureaucratic cost and the time frame. There was another challenge. The museums, no other museum in Brazil had ever done a project or a program like that. So we were starting to propose a very new concept to the vast majority of our target group. The guidelines, the rules and regulations had first to be approved by the board of the museum and then by APAC. APAC is a social non-profit organization that is responsible for the management of the museum. Also being a public institution, all works donated to the Pinacoteca, they have to go through a committee called COA that also belongs to the government. So we had some steps to go through when we were setting the rules and regulations and the operation mode of this group. And last but not least, unfortunately, Brazilians have a very different cultural approach to, from Americans and some European countries when it comes to donations for institutions, being them public or private. This, because I'm on the educational field, I also think that for schools and universities the same. So the mindset is completely different from what we see like here in the US. So we had to define a target group, and we thought, why not start with the collectors who already had a closer relationship with the art scene, not only in Brazil, but also were members of international committees and institutions outside Brazil, because they knew the models and we did not want to invent the wheel. So more or less, we were setting our model, not copying, but reading and benchmarking the models that were already working and operating in other countries. We also wanted to invite friends that were very active in the community, collectors, and a younger generation of collectors that were eager to learn and eager to become part of this group, part of a scene that was very much exclusive and closed. The thing is, the word that we used all the time was generosity, because people were really, they had to join because they were really willing to give out of their generosity, the money for the public institution. So our motto was, a museum is built with art of its time. With Pinacoteca's mission in mind, which is to be able to narrate over the years the unfolds and developments of Brazilian art, we set our aim in buying art from the 60s, 70s, and 80s up to now. There were so many gaps in the museum's collections, and we had to define a certain period that we would start. So we were able to show the group, how important this would be for Pinacoteca due to the budget and the limitations and lack of funding that the museum has throughout the year. Some important works were indeed leaving the country to other institutions and private collections outside Brazil. And in 2013, we were able to buy the collection for Pinacoteca, the first video by Carla Zaccanini. The museum did not have any videos in the collection. This group was 100% involved into the decisions of the works that were to be bought, and I felt this was very, very important. Also, there were no commercial galleries, artists, curators, or private dealers participating, so people felt very at ease during the plenaries. All the money collected, 100%, would go straight to the works, so it was very crystal clear. The amount donated was not, for Brazilians, it was a lot, $6,000 a year. And ideally, people would engage in this program for 3 years. It was not an obligation, but we explained how important it would be to have a 3 years minimum participation. So what was the outcome after 3 years of this program? We were able to buy 20 extraordinary works of art, all Brazilian artists. The program started with 0 patrons, and now it has 74. And the way we did it was mostly by talking to people, getting them by their hands, explaining, teaching, bringing them over and over to the museums. We felt that families that were not coming to visit the museum were discovering something completely new for them. There were a lot of dinners, formal meetings, explanations. It depended on the client, but we just made sure that we were able to explain and show the importance of this group. The first plenary was a great success. We had a lot of people that had not joined the program because they did not understand the concept, so they came on board. The quality of the works that were acquired in the first year made everyone so enthusiastic. It became the talk of the town. So people that were not in this program before started to ask questions that maybe they felt ashamed in the beginning, and they started to understand more. I think there were 3 elements that made us succeed in this program. The first one was we really made people feel the sense of belonging. People started to feel part of a world that is very selective and very exclusive. But again, it's a community. The community was very small in Brazil and needed to be more inclusive. So the sense of belonging, I think, was the most important element for the project. Proudness, people feel proud when they are involved in an initiative that will reverberate in their community. It's for the city, for the artists, for the rich, the poor, and for generations to come. And knowledge, I think being able to acquire knowledge, real knowledge, is really priceless. In 2000, so for 2015, this program will go on. I'm not coordinating the project anymore. I did it for 2 years. Now my friend Maggie is in charge. And in 2015, I will start another one, which will be a little bit different, together with Fernanda Brenner. Fernanda has, am I speaking too loud? I speak too loud. I usually don't need the microphone. I was a teacher, so. So Fernanda Brenner, she directs Pivot. Pivot is an independent private art space, and we want to start a group called Pivot Circle. Pivot is a non-for-profit private organization. It's located downtown São Paulo in a beautiful building designed by Oscar Niemeyer called Copan. This building is very, very old, and the government does not have money, and the people that live there, they do not have money to refurbish the building. And Fernanda was able to acquire this middle floor, which was completely destroyed. And in a year and a half, there was a major renovation in this. There's still a lot of work to do, but there was a major renovation. And in 2 years of operation, they were able to produce 30 different art projects, being them residencies, workshops, shows, ateliers, lectures. So we really shake the scene. Also, the idea is to have at Pivot only contemporary artists and young artists also from all over the world, not just Brazilians. During this period of 2 years, there were 210 artists from 15 countries that were involved in the projects. 25,000 people visited the space, which is a great success because people in Brazil, because of security reasons, sometimes they feel scared of going at night to downtown. And it just happened so, the way things were organized and the city organized around Copan was that people felt safe and they wanted to go and they wanted to visit the exhibitions and participate. So the idea of this new group is to set up, the setup is completely different because Pivot does not have a collection. The cost will be much lower because we want to make sure we also invite a younger generation of collectors. And it will be 100% based on Rouanet law. After many studies and learning with our lessons, we found out that because individuals can apply for the Rouanet law and they can deduct this from their income tax, it will be easier. So they will pay $2,500 per year. And because the space does not acquire works of arts, the members will be interacting with curators, with artists, on discussions about different exhibitions, shows, and interdisciplinary projects. So we're very excited, and we think that the project from Pinacoteca made us learn a great deal of things, and we hope to continue and never stop. Thank you very much for listening.
Ella, you need no introduction. You've been a leader in the community, and I think the word ambassador definitely applies here. So it would be really nice to get, you know, the last time I heard you speak was, I think, Documenta, like 2 documentas ago. It was 2 documentas ago. So it would be nice to kind of hear, now that you have the perspective of the past and you're looking at this development and the new programs that CIFO is engaging in, you know, what has been and what you're planning to do and what the institution has brought to this community and as the projects it's pursued all over the continent. It would be nice. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I first want to thank the audience, because to wake up so early, to come and listen to us, we should applaud you. Thank you, Abaseh. Thank you, our Basel. In 2001, I opened the first space here in Miami. It was called MAC, Miami Art Central, and the idea was to bring to Miami different exhibitions from around the world. I thought that there was needed to upgrade a little bit what we were seeing here in Miami. After that, because I was involved in philanthropy for many years in many different ways in my country, in Venezuela, I decided that I wanted to also bring philanthropy to what I love and what my passion was, arts. So in 2002, I opened a nonprofit organization here in the United States called CIFO, Cisneros Fontanals Art Foundation. The idea of opening here was because my family was living here. Even though I don't live totally all year long here in the country, my family was living here. Also because I thought that what I wanted to do was to try to push Latin American artists to be seen and to come out of their countries around the world. We're talking about, I started collecting very early in the 70s, and I started by collecting Latin American art. Eventually, and through the years, I then jumped into collecting, you know, worldwide or universal art. But my focus was always very much Latin America, because I was born in Cuba, but I grew up in Venezuela. So my first experiences with art was also Latin America. So my focus was always, how are we going to help our zones, our Latin American artists, to really be seen? And we're thinking that at the beginning of the year 2000, Latin America was far away from the minds of many museums and many people. So even though some, like MoMA and Tate, was always interested in a way or another in Latin America. So through CIFO, we started a program of grants and commissions. The idea was to give awards to emerging and mid-career artists who were really making big steps or coming along in each country. So we decided to build a board of people who would help us do this job in a very transparent way, in which the foundation was only playing the role of intermediaries. So we built that board through all curators from around Latin America. Those curators each year bring or propose projects of different artists. Those projects are then, we receive around 180 to 200 projects a year. The projects that are then seen by a small board from those 42 curators that we have around Latin America. They come to Miami, they stay more or less a week. They look at the projects, and then they choose around 10 emerging artists, 3 to 4 mid-career artists, and 2-3 years ago, we decided also to give an award to a much more accomplished artist. So now we have either 1 or 2 accomplished artists award. We bring them here to Miami. We give them an exhibition in our space. Our space is here next to the Miami Arena on North Miami Avenue. And then the artists all come here. First of all, they share a few days a week, 2 weeks, one with another. And then we create the exhibitions. The exhibition, then we try to either promote that exhibition to go to other places or to other countries. And of course, We have also now a prize for the ones who, our last process, I have to say, when we do the choices or the board does the choices, it comes back to our board because we want to also keep our board interested and involved in the process. So what we do is we take one or two of each block of artists, emerging or whatever, you know. Then the process of those artists coming here also opens up a new way of maybe we invite galleries, we invite people who are interested in these artists, and that promotes them to get new galleries. Some of them don't have a gallery. Some of them have never traveled outside, abroad their countries. So it's a great experience for them all. Then the artists who have the greatest voting, we give them the chance to stay here in Miami at a residency called Cannonball. So this year we're going to have, usually it's one, but this year we're going to have 2 people staying at Cannonball at the residency. The foundation, I mean, has gone a long way. When we started, it was maybe an uphill road because Latin American artists were not really well known or people were not so much interested. Today, things have changed. I think there's a lot of interest. We have here Paolo now who's heading a program for the Guggenheim, which is fantastic. And the Guggenheim, you know, had not had a real focused view on Latin America. And this has been incredible. Last year, during our Basel, we usually, during our Basel, make a show of the collection. And last year, because the Museum of Fine Arts of Boston came 2 years ago to us and said, we're interested in starting collecting Latin America, and we would like very much to do a project with you and to start an exhibition. So we did. We worked with 2 curators, the chief curator, which is Jan Merkel, and Liz Museo, and they started coming here to the foundation, became like 4 or 5 times, and it was a very interesting process because our curator, Jesus Mayor, did a good work of including everybody, every country, proposing to them to research new artists, and we came out with a beautiful exhibition called Permission to be Global. We showed that exhibition here in Miami last year during our Basel, and the exhibition then traveled to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It was their first exhibition. When the exhibition ended in July, I got all kinds of letters from the director and all of the board of directors because they had 95,000 people went to see the show, which they never thought it would happen in Boston. It was a great surprise for them and for me too. And we are trying our best to then move that exhibition probably to another place. We won an award of the best exhibition in the world. We compete with a lot of big exhibitions at the Tate and others in the Palmeiras, Tokyo. So I'm very proud of that. Also because it was a Latin American show, it showed something that we do very much is we try to place the new emerging artists with the more accomplished artists, to give them the opportunity to be shown and to be seen for so many people in a different way. So the foundation is now we are now 12 years of doing this. The first year we tried to do some residency program. It was hell because Miami is a different town. It is all spread out. We don't have like a district. Now Wynwood, in a way it is, but at that time it was very difficult for artists to meet with other artists because they live in different places around the city. Very complicated, you have to drive. And the first 2 artists who came was for that beautiful experience was Damasceno and Jarbas Lopez from Brazil. And they did works that today, after 12, 14 years that we've been doing this, were very avant-garde. The Moderno did this fantastic, work in the middle of the Miami Beach, which he's now continued to do after many years. So for us has been really a road of many surprises and many good times and happy times to see all of these artists who have been, recognized and who have, after all these years, had the opportunity of being there with every other artist from around the world. I try most of the time to not to be so, because we tend to divide by groups the artists. We say, emerging artists from China or from Latin America. They're all artists. They're all representing an idea, stamina, something within. And we shouldn't be naming it, by zoning or by. Unfortunately, if we don't do it today, then people don't understand us. But I think with time and with the globalization and what's happening around the world, this is going to change very rapidly. And one day we will all look at the artists as what they are, just artists, not from any zone. So I thank you for listening to my long talk, and. I wish that you come and see our new exhibition. This year exhibition is about abstract art and about the collection, and there are many Latin American artists there joining forces with many big accomplished artists from around the world. Thank you.
Actually, that was unscripted, but a beautiful way to finish it. And I'm going to give you a little time to think about your questions. I hope you have comments and questions. And while you think about yours, I do have a couple for you. Pablo, maybe this one I'll start with you, and then Victoria, you can comment on it as well, and Ella and Chris. Ending it on that point, which I think I know because I spend enough time with the three of you, two of you, it is that I think our aspiration is that artists be seen just as artists, and we drop those labels. I actually did a whole salon last year, which was about taking that whole world of Latin America out of the title, which is why it's not in this title. But given that is a concern, but at the same time, I think listening to you all, I was trying to take down the number of times you each said platform or a venue or a way to promote. Given that you have both of these concerns as curators first, because you both have been curators, and now as institution leaders, how do you balance kind of artistic integrity and working with the best and what you truly think is what is the best representation of the contemporary language in any of its forms, and balancing that with representation, because you have obligations as an institution to the community, whether it be very specific in the case of Buenos Aires, or suddenly when you have to take on a whole cone? Or how do you balance kind of the curatorial, given that we do come from a very kind of, there is a level, and there is a critique, and there is a value system placed. How do you balance it when you do your projects and your programs, and as you envision what's happening in your institutions?
So I'll start by following from Ella. This thing, artists always say to me, I just want to be an artist. I don't want to be Latin American. I don't want to be put in any specific regional or identitarian group. On the other hand, being able to do this at the Guggenheim or at the Tate, having Latin American departments, allows us to make up for those absences that hadn't happened within the institutions, to have specific budgets to do for those, to bring forward those artistic practices and those regions that had been excluded, So I think it's a way of bringing the level up and leveraging the situation. Another point I wanted to raise was, the idea that it's great that we're able to do these things happening in New York, to do them in Miami, but it's how do we give back to the region? How do we make things happen in the region? And I think, again, here, Victoria and Christina are two examples of how things are happening in the region and how we find ways ways to support them, no? Which I think is a very important thing. It's not only about bringing them, bringing the artists and making up what's absent in New York, but how to help strengthen the structures in the different places, how to create networks and connections between them in the region, but also outside the region. And the third thing, again, I'll insist on the idea of education, especially because yesterday was the 100th anniversary of the birth of one of my heroes, Brazilian-Italian architect Lina Bobardi. She was born 100 years ago. And on a text that she wrote in 1958, it was called Houses or Museums. And she said, in a country that's still under development, where there's a lot of poverty, where there's immediate needs like housing, like attacking poverty, is culture a necessity? What should come first? And she says, both should come at the same time. It's as important to build houses and attack poverty as to attack culture. Culture in Latin America shouldn't be a luxury item. And she says it needs to be alive. We need to bring people in the museum, and education is the way to do it. So again, the way for government, the way for corporations, the way for private money to support museums is really that understand that culture is a necessity. It's not only a luxury item, and it's a way to have an impact in their countries, in their communities, in the region.
Well, it's great to be part of this panel. I'm very excited to hear every one of you, and very grateful for this provocation. You've said a lot of things very fast, so I'm going to try to address them, as well as Abaseh's question, which I will combine. You just mentioned houses or museums, and I like to think of the museum as a home. And this is something very important for us at our museum, that the museum feels a home for the artists, and the artists have this feeling of belonging in the museum, and hopefully a society at large as well at some point. In this construction of an institutional structure that is able to respond to a social constituency, of course, there are museums, but as Ela mentioned, and Chris as well, there are many other structures and systems and constituencies, institutions, artist-run projects, as Pablo has mentioned, and every one of you. And within those, I want to mention as well, you mentioned CIA, and here in the audience we have Judy Wertheim, who is one of the very big founders of CIA, and who is now in the Cannonball board, creating a new educational program called RAD. So I'm just like telling you that we are all working every time and opening doors, all these passionate people that we try to be. And to respond to Abaseh's very difficult question, very challenging question as always, I think it is very difficult what you say in terms of, I like to think that we curators or we directors or we people in the art world, when we have a project, you have to be true to yourself. The only way in which you can try to be just, to honor the audience that you will have, to honor the artists that work so hard every day, is to be totally true to yourself and to know that wherever you are, you have limitations. So I am now in Buenos Aires. I direct a museum, and I feel extremely honored to do so. And my constituency are the Argentine artists. And I love to work for them. And I love to send them out into the world. And my way of sending them out into the world is to do our exhibitions locally as strong and as thought-provoking as possible, so that the world will hear about them, and to give the artists their publications so that then they have a tool to go out into the world. But I know I can help them be global and be in the world if I do my specific job as the best as I can do it, and not to try to be myself out into the world when I direct a museum in Buenos Aires. So I think the response would be, it's in the center of each person, how to balance the artistic integrity and the need to represent more fully the artists that we wish to give visibility to.
Ella and Chris, how about, I mean, speaking of that, what have you found to be the greatest tools in supporting this process, particularly outside of Miami or in São Paulo, to taking it abroad? How can we, given that you all are on the part that makes a lot of what we do possible because you sponsor it and we would like more of it, please. And how do you see that becoming a multiplier and being able to take it further out, to be able to multiply this effect?
Well, what I can tell you is very hard work. I move around a lot. I'm all the time visiting people, visiting museums, talking to curators, talking to different artists. So I think for me, in my case, that's my passion, that's what I do, that's what I have dedicated. My whole time is dedicated to that. But it's really hard work because, I mean, there's something behind all of this that is called marketing, which the artists are not too good at, you know. Most of the artists are people who think about what they want to do, how they want to expose it, but then, you know, even when we receive all of these grants and projects, the projects, you see that the artists are difficult to even, you know, give words to their ideas so that you can understand them. So you become like an intermediary of what they think and what they want to do and how to expose that to the public and to the world, you know? So for me, it is a piece of my daily life, you know? I work for them every single day of my life. When I speak with a curator, when I go out, and it's the only way. I mean, in my own personal opinion, I am not a full-time director like you are all, you know, sometimes involved in other different areas, no? But in my case, being a person, you know, I do it for philanthropy, that's the most important thing, you know, to help them do that.
Chris, how have you seen it change? How have you seen it change?
I think that, like Ella said, it's very hardworking and it's nonstop. And one of the most important things is to be really creative and make sure that the process is coming back. So you're feeding the community back, and the community makes it go. And it's like a big ball going down a hill. So when it starts, you can't stop, and one thing unfolds to something better. But it's hard work. It's every day. It's like taking care of a plant that you have to put water every day. And there's a funny story. On the first plenary that we at Pinacoteca, there was a work that was for the education department. And the curators at that time, Ivo Mesquita, said, "Oh, I don't think people will decide on this work because it's not a very well-known artist, and it's a work that will go straight to the education department, and it will not be, I think, ever in an exhibition." And it was the first work that people voted. So this showed us that, like Pablo said, the museum was operating also for the patrons. They understood the mission of the museum as being a school as well, not only a place where people would come to see an exhibition, but people would learn. The schools could bring their students. So I felt this was really making a change.
Pablo, you touched on this, the word education, and I know it's near and dear to all our hearts, and you work in it full time. So I want to touch back. I remember when I was director of Jumex, I did the first exhibition with a kind of an established museum in the United States, and they said that they wanted to bring their educational package for us in Mexico City, and Jumex now has a very beautiful museum in the middle of the city in Polanco, but before it was, and this beautiful space still exists, it's in Ecatepec, which is probably one of the poorest regions of outer skirt Mexico City, about an hour and a half outside. And it really was a challenge. The first meetings I sat with this very wonderful museum in the United States to explain to them that their educational package that was geared towards a town in, you know, Midwest United States was just definitely not going to be understood in Mexico City. And for them to, and it wasn't better or worse, it was just we had different needs, different communities, different experiences. And now education is such a big part of, every one of you mentioned education. I definitely sense in the last 10 years that I've been privileged enough to live in Mexico and been involved in the cone, that education has taken a greater relevance. 2 weeks ago, Pablo was with the Guggenheim team in Mexico, and I met with them, and their sole purpose there was to talk about education, and I was really shocked. So it would be nice if maybe you talk about this evolution and why it has now become important to take into consideration kind of the community, how to activate the audience, and particularly through education, which seems to be more and more important nowadays.
So first, 3 concepts that I'd like to recover that I've heard here, and I think they're great. The museum as a home, the museum as a school, but also the museum as a boat, which I think was as a boat. No? Your first image that you showed of the museum moving around and this creating of networks between museums, which I think is really important. As I said, a very important part of the project and a priority for UBS in supporting the project was education. In these, my colleagues in the education department have traveled with me to Sao Paulo and to Mexico to engage with the education departments. The education department from Sao Paulo also came to New York to see the exhibition and to see how they work there. And now the Mexico team of education of Jumex is going to Sao Paulo, so we're going to have like a three meeting. And what they found is pretty amazing, is that our team at the Guggenheim is not going there to teach anything, but actually that they're learning. For example, the MAM in Sao Paulo has an incredible education program, focused a lot on teenagers. The museum is in a park, and it's very used by teenagers, even many immigrants from Bolivia and other places, many transgender or young gay and lesbian groups. They also have a very big education group for deaf and mute, so they do deaf and mute education. So really, I mean, they were very surprised that actually the team from New York was learning from Sao Paulo. In these terms, the education program allows also each department to approach needs that they wanted to do and they hadn't been able to do. So, for example, the Sao Paulo team has decided that their priority is to do a publication of what their education program has been in the past years, what they've learned, and to transmit it not only to other museums in Brazil, so it's going to be a bilingual guide, but to do it also in English, so other museums can learn from their experience. So that was a priority for them that we're supporting through the program. In Mexico, the experience it's also, I mean, they're a very dynamic, very young team, and we're still to see what they want to do. And in New York, what we did was invite Luis Camitzer to do the education guide, the education program. He said, I don't want to use your normal education guide. We need to treat the public as adults, as people that know. We cannot treat them as children. It's great that you do children guides, but we need to treat them as a public that knows and is informed. And as part of the program, he gifted us a work of art, which is supposed to go in the facade of the museum where it's exhibited. It's a text piece, and it says, a museum is a school. The artist learns to communicate. The public learns to make connections. So really the 3 actors connecting and the responsibilities each one has. So hopefully one day we'll have it in the facade of the museum. At the moment we only have it as a postcard with the Photoshop text on it. Hopefully we'll also install the work in Sao Paulo and in Mexico in the facades of 2 buildings as a way of, one, involving artists as part of the process. I mean, the artist is a very important part of this education process, using their work as a window, as a knowledge base, and 2, involving the museum and the public.
Say a few words on that, and then maybe Victoria.
Well, I think that I've always thought, how do we engage this education? We always think about education in a very formal way, maybe thinking that we need to bring people into a classroom or people into a very structured place, which I think, you know, the museum has always been looked at from outside as an elitist place. people are afraid sometimes to go into an institution that they really don't know what's happening inside, and they don't know what's hanging there. I think the museum is changing. Of course it's changing their structure. And I think we need to, in our institutions, we need to bring the public through different ways. Probably some things that are more popular. It doesn't look like a museum thing, but music and other things attracts people. And then when they are there, is your chance, your moment to teach them that a museum, there's nothing to be afraid of. Come, participate, learn through the process of what's on the wall, ask questions. How do we do a process that is more lighter for the public so that we engage more people? This is something, for example, in the city of Miami that needs to be done, because people don't walk on the streets like in other cities that you walk and you enter. So you have to bring the people, you have to catch the attention of the people and tell them, look, come for something that maybe looks very trivial, but behind that should be that education that has to happen in a very spontaneous and very light way.
There's so much to be said about education. Just a few ideas. I was listening to Pablo, and I was getting inspired, and then I listened to Ella, and then other few ideas. So we'll start by Ella. At our museum, we're working with the University of Industrial Design to have young industrial designers design what we call the mobile museum, which is a vehicle that has to be designed. I don't know the shape of it yet. And they are working on projects of how the museum could go out into the city as a vehicle and also as a suitcase, etc., etc. We are trying to bridge that gap, which is a true one. The people are intimidated by museums. That is a fact. And what we try to do when they come inside is to have educators in our gallery spaces that do not have a script, that each one builds their own vision and their own understanding of the works of art exhibited, to enter in dialogues with the public on a personal basis, in the sense of trying to empower both the educator and the public to really value what is their individual vision of the world or of the arts, or to have the confidence to ask very sincere questions. So it is a very slow process, I think, a very small process of transformation that cannot happen very quickly. We are trying to build also from the network of the city public schools, because there's the whole city of Buenos Aires could potentially, the total of the children of all the schools in Buenos Aires could come to the museum. So we're trying to build a structure in order to accommodate more young visitors that hopefully will then bring their families too.
Chris, maybe looking at Pivot, because it doesn't have a collection, because it's geared towards this younger, and because it's focusing on contemporary projects. And you and I were talking about yesterday the fact that the building isn't up to full museum's requirements. It allows for more experimental, more daring kind of exhibitions. Is there going to be a greater educational program? Is that one of the focuses of the...
Yes, I think the idea for Pivot Circle is based on education, because the young collectors, they want to be closer to the artists. They want to know why the exhibition will be so and so. So I think by setting the structure of the program based on education and bringing the community closer to the artists, to the curators, and to the overall, even to the directors of the premises, I think this will make a big difference. And we're very excited because we think it's a model, it's a new model for Brazil. neither MAN or Pinacoteca or MACI or MASP have programs like that. And we feel that the younger collectors, even the collectors who are more mature, they want something new. They want to learn about this new art space that is bringing so many emerging artists from all over the world. Sometimes people don't travel as much as we do, so they don't learn about artists which live in different regions. So I think it will be a way also of, it will be an education process, being closer to.
Do we have any questions out there? I have a couple more, but should we open it? We do seem to have some questions. There's a microphone, and if you could stand, it would be wonderful because the lights don't allow us to see.
Hi, thank you for your comments. They're really fantastic. Two things came up that I'd like you to think about and maybe respond to. One was artist residencies as vehicles for artists to receive a kind of research and development level of support where they could develop concepts and then even produce works which maybe then some of you bring into your collections. Can you hear me now? Okay. And then the relationship of residencies, artists being some of our greatest assets, with education and working within the locality in which they're based, especially with marginalized communities, and not just the community of artists as their constituency. So I'm interested in particular, as you have been designing numerous residencies and you've been working locally, what do you feel the future importance, or how can these residencies be leveraged so there's a really more proactive relationship between education and the artists themselves being in your community?
It's a good question. I think the artists, people feel far away from the artists. And I think by starting this project, it will be a challenge because we will learn from it from scratch. I don't have that answer for you. It's a question we have always put to ourselves and for the future. We feel that by starting it slower, Pivot already has about 5 to 10 artists doing residency, and this sometimes there are exhibitions involving these artists, sometimes there are no exhibitions. We feel that by having the group together with them, maybe the decisions on exhibitions, maybe they will help us make the final decisions on the exhibitions. But for us, it is a question for the future. How will this work? How the day-to-day operation will develop, will unfold?
Any of you want to comment on that? On residencies?
Yeah, I think there's many interesting programs happening in the whole of the continent. And again, the question is how can we support them? Traditionally, many of them are supported by the artists themselves. Some artists that become successful abroad reinvest in their own territory. I think of Guillermo Cuitca and Rebecca Cuitca in Argentina, of Oscar Muñoz in Lugar a Dudas, Damián Ortega and doing Alias Editorial, where he translates books into Spanish that were not published before, or Joshua O'Connor and Eduardo Avaroa again with Soma, or Michi Marzuach in CIA, in Beta Local in Puerto Rico. So how can we continue supporting those initiatives? So I think it's a door open for those that have interest in supporting the scene, in how to help things happen. One initiative, another one that I'm going to name, is Davidoff Art Initiative, which is part of here, has been very active in Dominican Republic, which is located in what I call the Bermudas Triangle. You know, there's interesting things happening there, and nobody was paying attention. So Davidoff is supporting artists from there to go abroad. A third way to support the scene is to support also curators. I mean, it's great to support artists, but also have curators travel, go to other places, see the artists. Curators are the ones that help make the connections, that invite artists to go to other places. So it's a third point where I think we can support through residencies and programs. And then other collections who are also directly supporting initiatives in different places. So it's not only anymore Prince Claus and Evos in Netherlands, but even collections in Latin America that are supporting these different initiatives. And I think that's a great door to make things happen in grounds up.
Do we have another question, perchance? I have one more, and I think that's time, right? I have one more. I do want to end it not on money, but on support and the need to support our, you know, you go out into the world and you can multiply, but I do think that I think that our institutions need the support to be able to communicate all of this. And although we have been focusing a lot on talking about the artists that are of Mexican heritage or, you know, our Brazilian heritage, we really are talking about a dialogue. I think our hope is that it just becomes that dialogue at the end of the day. And how are you dealing with the challenges? I honestly don't know how you did that many shows with $1 million. It is a feat. And understanding the economic realities of Buenos Aires. But how can we think of new models to be more supportive of that? And I don't think it's only for those shows. I'm doing a show of a pretty renowned British artist in Mexico, and I can tell you the fundraising has been really, really difficult. But how can we look for new mechanisms to be able to support the projects? How can we build support for you guys?
Big question. This is the question that doesn't allow me to sleep every night. But what we are trying to do, we are new in fundraising. This is my first experience as a director, and I'm learning. I need to learn as much as every one of you can teach me. I will learn. And we have a very small team. We have created 2 programs, a program for individuals with which are 7 support circles. We were too ambitious and too excited, and we had to create 7 circles. One for education, to support education, to protect and strengthen our collection management, for the young artist exhibitions, and so forth. And we have created a corporate program that is very, very young, and it is starting to have its own results. I think it's a vast territory for learning, and I don't have much expertise on the subject.
Well, I want to touch the subject in a different way. I think, for example, in Latin America, we don't have that little thing, that bug of giving in the way that we are thinking here, for example, in the United States. The United States, people first have an incentive to give, because you can deduct from your income tax, etc. Also, because since you're a child, there is something here in this country that tells you you have to give back to your community, give back to. In our countries, unfortunately, we don't have that, and it's very difficult to fundraise in the normal way that, for example, we do here in the United States. I think that what we need to do is to lobby the governments, because we need to change the laws in Latin America. It's impossible that, for example, in Brazil, to get any piece of art is almost impossible. It takes you 6 months to get a piece of art through customs in Brazil. Or that you have no incentive on giving. So I think we need to work, the general public can help by lobbying the governments, talking to them, saying, hey, we need to change our laws because culture is important. And unfortunately, in all Latin American countries, when there is an economic downsize, the first thing they touch is culture. The first thing they cut is culture. So the institutions get really, hit by all of this. So the general public should be aware that we need to change those roots in Latin America. We need to lobby the government. We need to change the laws. That's a very important thing.
Not only change, but make them very transparent. I think it's also, because I noticed when we began the project at Pinacoteca, it was very difficult to explain to people why we chose not to have Rouanet law involved. First, people thought that this law was only offered to the companies, not to individuals. And actually, it's even, you raise the bar because the individuals can donate 6% instead of 4%. But the law, it's so complicated, there's so much bureaucratic that you have to go through. There's the time frame, the costs of going through all the paperwork that people just give up. So not only change it, but make it more clear, easier, because I think everyone will benefit for this. Not only the institutions, but also the community that is making the donations.
I think, I mean, one, there was not the culture of philanthropy that Ella was saying, and the other, a lot of collectors and persons prefer to be part of boards of museums abroad than support the museums in their own countries because there was no faith in institutions. And I think, again, this is changing in terms that not only institutions are becoming stronger, but the artistic communities and private people have defended these institutions, and in a way they've started acting also as watchdogs, you know, that and created private and public partnerships to defend what's happening. So now people know that if they donate a work to an institution, it will be kept there and not go to the house of a politician, which used to be the case 50 years ago. You know, people didn't know and didn't have trust in giving to institutions because they didn't know what was going to happen in the place. Venezuela was one of the few places where there was a strong culture of women, and there still is, and they were giving to the museums, but now that's not even possible in Venezuela itself. So it's a responsibility also as private persons, as curators, our artists, to create these partnerships and to ask for the government, to ask to the corporations. The corporations are making money of the telephone companies, the products that they sell to the public, but to be responsible and to give back. That there's a cultural responsibility, and in this term, I mean, UBS has been an ideal client, an ideal sponsor in really totally respecting what we do. You know, totally giving us carte blanche and yes, putting education as a forefront. Not all the sponsors of projects are like that, you know, so we also need to educate the sponsors because sometimes they don't understand what they're doing. They ask things which are not realistic. So
I think it's very true. It's obvious that we could continue to speak. We really are grateful that you gave so much of your time this morning to us, to Art Basel. Mary Jessica, thank you so much. And this was just a snapshot. We really encourage you, invite you, should you have the time and the resources to come and visit each of the countries and the projects that are happening. That is the best way we can showcase them. But I think Pablo's words were really true. I mean, we all need to be more active, whether it is socially, culturally, being more involved in our community. And I think it might be easier some way doing it culturally. So get involved wherever you are. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Abaseh.